Hola, I am Adriana, born and raised in Colombia, South America. Came to live in the United States almost 20 years ago and currently live in Maryland with my husband and his younger son. I'm a computer science engineer working for a government contracting company. I started Wanderlust in 2022 and I have so much fun. I have learned to work with a lot of supplies and also how to substitute those supplies. The classes on Wanderlust 2022 and 2023 has been divided by star supply. This year we started with pastels, then we did pencils, then pens. Now we're doing sprays and mists, and we will continue with pigments and powders and finish with monoprinting and carving. At the start of every star supply, Kasia always give us a video of how to work with the supply, how to substitute, and it's very educational because we learn techniques and we also learn what kind of suppliers we can get them from. For Wanderlust 2023, I am working on my watercolor pad as well as on a Dylusion art journal, and I'm going to be flipping through these two art journals. But first, two things. Don't forget, if you are in the UK, you can visit Kasia's shop and get a signed copy of her latest book, Creative Wanderlust. Or if you are outside the UK, you can order the book from plenty of websites as I did. Second, at the Wanderlust, we have the Adventurous Cycle, which is a private community in which we post our pictures for the classes. We also are able to ask questions to the teacher, ask questions about the materials, and Kasia and her team are always available for us. The first style supply for Wanderlust 2023 were pastels. Week 1 Kasia book class. My word for 2023 is recharge. For this lesson, I gathered my oil pastel, white gesso, and 2 acrylic paints, and my watercolor pencils. I follow Kasia's advice of working with what I have on hand and not to wait to get the perfect supplies. I found and printed the meaning of my word of the year, and I use a watercolor pencil to shade them out. Also, I gold embossed my word of the year G chart. I use my Inspire metallic eyeshadows on top of some of the oil pastels. Week 2 was with Melissa Fink. It was texture, and Melissa gave us a great lesson and so many techniques and information. I let her guide me through this art journal page, and I was transported to such a happy place while completing it. I used my oil pastel for the whole background composition. Then I accentuated with some birds with dark brown embroidered color thread. I added some snow mess on the landscape and some fabric as a cloud. I used matte medium as glue. To finish, I added Inspire metallic eyeshadows to the landscape and to the sky. Week 6 was with Beth Shawn. It was layers. This class was very liberating for me. So many layers, I loved it. The process was very chaotic, but everything came together at the end. We used a color book piece, soft pastels, tissue paper, and some fluid acrylics, black and blue acrylics, and some black Sharpie. And to accentuate, I used some white Posca pen. The second star supply for Wanderlust 2023 were pencils. Week 9, it was Kasia book class. For this lesson, under the layers of this lovely digital paper, white gesso, and eye cutouts from magazines, we did some heartfelt journaling using watercolor pencils. I wrote my word of the year, recharge, And then I journal about my feelings for the weekend. I have fun using watercolor pens to journal. Then I grab some water on a big brush and I watch all my journaling melting before my eyes. And I felt safe that nobody will ever read what I wrote that day. Week 11, Maricle Shawn, Emotions and Feelings with Pencils. I found my inspiration from a very old tree I saw on my walks weeks ago. I named the tree the Old Wise Tree, and it brought me peace to admire him. It brought me much needed connection with nature while I was at the hospital with my mom. I did some asemic writing on tissue paper, and I did some journaling that I glued facing down before all the embellishment as Maricle suggested so nobody will be able to read it. Week 13, it was Jeanne Oliver, People with Pencils. She did a great technique and demonstration on how to contour sketch. I could not get myself to do it, so I improvised and I used what I wanted to use. A Prima Free Split Clinch stamp that I have and I have used several times in the past. Since I used my watercolor pad, I created the whole background with soft watercolors and some metallic splatters. I stamped her on water-soluble ink on purpose so the black ink could get some movement while I was using copy markers to bring her alive. I gave her some final touches with white Posca pen and metallic watercolors. She's so beautiful and I'm mesmerized that she looks like a mermaid. The, the third style supply for Wanderlust 2023 were pens. Week 24 was with Amy Maricle. This is my second take on the class. After I finished take one, I kept looking at Amy's video and I wanted to do some watercolor lines. It was stressful at the beginning, but then, oh boy, my creativity flowed like the Niagara Falls. To make things more fun, I wanted to incorporate a masculine challenge from another website, and I have a lot of elements from my Wanderlust Live 2022 stamp collage papers with Rachel Gray class. I have baby ephemera, I have tea bag, and I did some buttons and some pirate stickers, envelope paper, and more ephemera over here. The four-star supply for Wanderlust 2023 were sprays and mists. Week 27 with Daniel Mack, Emotions and Feelings. Real magic did happen to me when I was following Daniel's class. I felt like I was using all the exact supplies that she was using, and the painting on this face felt more like applying makeup on my real face. I do want her lips as my own lips. I love how shimmery she is. I love the contrast between the light and the dark side of her face, her thoughts on her forehead, and the necklace and earrings. The peaceful of her closed eyes. I may need to frame this lesson because I'm over the moon with the results. This is a Ranger Dylusion created journal. It is 11 and 3/8 of an inch by 8 by 1/4 of an inch. Originally, it comes with 64 sheets, 128 pages, but I have already taken some of the pages out to use it as draft and to give the journal a little bit more space to grow. I decorated the front using some specialty handmade paper. Week 4 was with Arlyna. It was contract using the first style supply for Wanderlust 2023 Pastels. We created these gorgeous 4 pages using flowers. we mixed the soft pastels with water and with some flaxseed oil. The intense blue was done with acrylic paints, and I covered the window with wooden like washi tape. I stamped some botanicals with water-based ink, and I used some pink tissue paper on some of the flowers. I did some embroidered with floss to give it some accents to several of my flowers. And I also used some stenciling with modeling paste on the sides. Week 5 was with Carolyn Dube. It was about people using soft pastels. Carolyn class was very relaxing and we used very few materials. She provided also some prompts, but I used my own black and white copies of our old booklet and I colored them with soft pastels and my old eyeshadow palettes. Week 7, Ray Missigman with Botanicals and Pastels. Ray was quick and effective. The idea was not to get hung up on the botanical details. I did a first layer of collage using pieces of dark color paper, tea-dye paper, and book pages. And then I turned it all down with white acrylics. Then I worked with the old pastels and some watercolors. I stenciled some of my floaters and I also did some of them with acrylic paints, the leaf over here and this one. And I also use acrylic paint on some of the accents. Week 8, Shawn Petite for the Artful Musings. My inspiration came from the upcoming, at that point, spring season and wanted to use repurpose and recycle some papers. These pages have so much movement. I love them. I work on these art journal pages very quick as Shawn proposed, letting my creativity to be fully present. The side white and teal paper are part of a restaurant back paper that I got, and the florals are some tissue paper I got as wrapping paper, and the rest of the embellishments are from my own stash. The second star supply for Wanderlust 2023 were pencils. This is week 12 with Rebecca Chapman. It was contract. I happily did this lesson using my pencils and half pans watercolor to draw some of the veins and give them some continuation effect to create more contrast. This is some beautiful floral tissue paper that spoke to me at the moment, and I was not afraid to use it all. I finished my art journal composition by adding a title, wise words, and subtitle, warm hugs. Week 14 was Felicitas Mayer. It was layers, also with pencils. This class was very appealing to me since I'm also a memory keeper and I came to art journal mixed media with a heavy background on scrapbooking. I frequently take full body pictures to document my outfits of the day, so I picked one of my collages from January 2023. I prepped my art journal pages with a collage of dictionary paper, music paper, and I added a gel photo transfer I did in 2022 on Wanderlust that it didn't came as well as I wanted at that point, but it was perfect for this collage. The floaters with watercolor pencils and leftover white acrylic paint were very fun and addictive to do. I had to place my journal away to stop on this page. Week 15 was with Carolyn Dube. It was Botanicals. I used my watercolor pencil metallic white and silver acrylic paint, and white gesso. Since my live routine was being altered at that time, I wanted to incorporate that into my art journal page. And I decided to glue my first layers of the flowers and book pages pieces with the writing upside down. This gave me such a release feeling, like knowing that whatever life throws on me or at me, it can be handled because it's in my core, even if life happens. Then, those days that I went to the office, people at work were not getting the best of me. So I decided not to let that happen and wrote the words I'm using here on my whiteboard. And this way I'm looking at them and do as I read. This lesson was such a therapeutic practice for me on many levels. Week 17 was the Star Supply pens, and this is the Wanderlust book with Kasia. I use acrylic paints and a brayer for the background to coordinate with the envelope and the card my cousin gave me at that point. For the first vellum layer, instead of cutting the shape to let my felt silhouette see through, I carefully burned the vellum to uncover my furs and hair. We learned that technique on Wanderlust 2022. And then I used copy maker on the second layer and some watercolors on my lips. For the third layer, I used Sharpies and blue, purple, green, and also silver and some watercolor on my face. For the next layer, it's my original picture, which I added this button embellishment. Then the fifth layer is the vellum that have the journaling, how I was feeling at the time I was doing this media art lesson in a way that it will not be readable for anybody. Week 18 was with Robyn McClendon. It was textures also with the Star Supply pen. This was a fun class. I upcycled fabric pieces from tailoring suits and PJs, as well as coffee filter and other random pieces of laces from my stash. This mandala, the round one, is mine, hers. It has off-white lace, soft pink lace, and a lavender flower and pearl. And this mandala, the square is for his. It's a brown tutu, burgundy ribbon, music paper from a jelly print, black and white handmade paper. And then I use my Posca pens also to outline this part over here. It looks like I did some embroidered. And I finally added a metal piece. Week 19 with Iris Fritschi, it was emotions and feelings. This was about unrealistic faces. I liked the concept. I followed Ida's video and I had fun letting go of perfection and playing with unrealistic color on the hair contour. To my surprise, I like her eyes and eyelashes as well as her gesture of well-being on her face. I did use some color instead of white to bring the face to the front. I prepped this art journal with turquoise and aqua green and also some red ochre and metal white. I used several Posca pens in light blue, aqua green, light pink, and some red for for the lips of this face. This is a saying that says sketch your life and put color on it. Week 21 was with Consie, Sindet. It was people's, also with pens. I love this class. We were to find faces that will emerge after we completed layers of collages and painting with acrylic using unconventional tools and even our fingers. I added some gems to the faces, and also from this class, I discovered that I'm more inclined to work with even numbers instead of odd numbers. I also use several of my stamps on the background and use the Posca paint to define the eyes and the nose and some finished touches with white Posca pens. Week 22, it was with Jeanne Oliver. It was all about layers with pens. I decided to use my all wise tree as inspiration again, and I enjoy interpreting its lines and form using a tomboy brush pen and assorted watercolors. I use a whole page from my local supermarket magazines. Since every summer I get so fixated with lemons, I added musical paper on the side, and I feel so happy and satisfied with my art journal page. I feel like I did use limited color palette, and the whole composition came together so vivid and summery. I placed my title, When Life Gives You Lemons, Me Lemonade in Spanish, in between the musical lines on my own wonky handwriting. Week 23, it was Shemi Dixon with Botanicals. Shemi voice was so inviting. I stopped the video after a few minutes and I waited until the next day and I had time to follow along. The way she explained doing the flower was fearless. I used teacups paper cutouts as bases for my flowers. I drew my flowers using my black Posca pens, then did some of the accent with gold foil and white Posca pens. For the background, I sprayed some flat Fabio sprays and used bead cage stencils with a mix of white gesso and acrylic paints. I love my final composition and the fact that I used all the flowers we created at that class. Week 24 was with Amy Maricle. This class, I confirmed that my art journal practice gets a lot of influence from the season and the kind of activities I do on monthly basis. In June, which is the month I was born, I love anything inspired with zodiac symbols. The letters were cut out from a paper I fill up with the Gemini symbol using blue pen. Then the faces were from a stamping section I did while following Wanderlust Live 2022. I stamped it on collage papers live with Rachel Gray class. To imitate a wooden background, I apply white gesso, then I apply some shimmery eyeshadow with a brush, then I sprinkle the eyeshadow pigment and some water. One of the faces is wearing red lipstick and the other one is wearing a nude lipstick with darker lip liner. Also, they are wearing eyeshadow. Week 25 was the Wanderlust book with Kasia to start with the sprays and mist. I did as Kasia say on the video. I washed it, I took bits and pieces, and then I came to my studio to have fun. I created my little pile of things I'm grateful for and that bring me joy. I used one of my birthday gifts, a Dymo. Yeah, I didn't own one before. For my background, I used pre-mixed powdering paint and some that I found at my local store. I used a crackle stamp to place my words, and I also use some white and silver Posca paint to hang my words. I tried using my own handwriting for the title. I'm not thrilled about it, but it's going to stay. Week 26 was with Carolyn Dube. It was textures with sprays and mist. While watching Carolyn's first video, I made several pages of stencilings with acrylic, and I used all music book pages and some shades of acrylic paints that I usually do not gravitate towards. I sprayed them with different ink. And for my illusions background, I adventured to stencil the sides with some snowflakes, and I printed in white gesso first. I really like the results. Instead of defined shapes, I tear up the pages of each of my ink pages, and I accommodated them to almost fill up the pages, leaving the borders and the snowflakes uncovered. Then I apply some metallic white and pale pink with brayer to bring the colors down. And I felt like the art journal was missing something. Then at that point, I printed out my recent small felt selfies with my husband, and I used again my Dymo to add places and dates. They are placed on top of handmade paper that blends out pretty well, since still bringing each picture forward. Love my super busy, colorful background. Week 28 was cat care contracts with sprays and mist. I used a piece of watercolor page prep with black acrylic paint. Then we used some Dylusions inks with white acrylic paint with a round brush, stamps, or any found objects to create a whole piece of random painted marks. Using a template of a supersized puzzles, I tried the pieces on the back of the painted watercolor paper, and I cut out the pieces, adjusting some of the corners to be able to glue some blue glitter in between. Before I glue these pieces, I did use some spray Mod Podge to adhere the glitter best to the background. So this class was intended to be a mosaic class, but I rather use a puzzle than a mosaic. Then on my left side, I wanted to use some more traditional art journal. So I used some black coloring books and some ladies ephemera that I put some white oil pastels, and they look like they levitating. I also use some of my insect papers and this place in as saying what seems ordinary is often the extraordinary. Week 29 was with LaQuisha Hall. It was on people, and I really like LaQuisha's creations, and this class was wonderful. I wanted to make it very special for me, so I took my time. I watched the videos, then I created an idea in my mind while I was picking the word I wanted to use in these art journal pages. I love that in the picture, my silhouette looks like she's peeking out of the background on the page. I added many layers, colors, and embellishments as I wanted until I was satisfied with the final page. This paper on the background is from Boo Bunny Enchanted Garden paper pack. I used Dylusion ink sprays, Ranger Distress mica sprays, and Lindsay Flap Flavio. This prima doll is Holly. Week 30 was with Maricle Shawn. It was about layers. This is the last art journal page I had completed for Wanderlust 2023 by the time I'm filming this flip through. Since Maricle gave us permission to go and play with our supplies and then come back, I used black cardstock and Ranger alcohol inks paper with all my sprays and inks. For my background, I used tea bags. I cut out an art phrase that resonated to me. There is no Moss in R because R is free by Wassily Kandinsky, and I placed them on top of a piece of handmade gore paper. Since I didn't know anything about this artist, I googled him and I found he used geometrical elements in black, so I used my black ink cardstock and added some into my art journal pages. I named these art journal pages on the tea bags. I added Ranger, Tin Holz alcoholic ink, in latte and on the borders and to cover some patches. And to finish up, I spray alcohol to reactivate some of the inks, and I love it because it gave the whole piece a sense of unison. Thank you for watching my flip through video. Don't forget, if you are in the UK, you can order a signed copy of Kasia book, Create a Wanderlust, or if you are outside the UK, you can order it from plenty of websites as I did. Hope to see you next year at the Adventurous Cycle. Hasta pronto!